afternoon, everyone. It's a great pleasure to welcome you all to this roundtable, Identity Through Materiality. Before we begin, I'd like to mention that English isn't my first language, so if French words happen to slip in my conversation, excuse me, I'll try to do my best to stay fluent. As someone who comes from the field of heritage conservation and art, this topic feels particularly close to my heart. Materials have always been the root of language of my expression, the silent witness I work with, and the primary elements I strive to understand, preserve, and transmit. Whether in art conservation, they carry the memory of human gestures, the traces of time, and the resilience of our culture. This is in many ways what Identity Through Materiality is all about, a theme that touches something profound, the relation between matter and meaning, between materials we shape and the identity we construct, and from earth, clay, fiber, to recycled materials, or technological materials. Each carries traces of memory, of culture, and of place. Each holds something of who we are, our tradition, our innovation, our identity, our hopes. They are more than just physical elements. They are vessels of emotion and imagination. Today, we welcome our speakers from different and various backgrounds and experience. Through their voices, artists, architects, designers, researchers will explore how materials become language of belonging, innovation, and continuity. Our discussion will be divided in 3 parts. The first part is roots and matter. The second is transformation and innovation. And the third one is transmission. Now, to begin this conversation, I'd like to open our first part which revolves around roots and matter. This section looks at how natural materials, earth, clay, fiber, paper, connect us to our origin, to memory, and to the land itself. It's about how artists and architects transform humble materials into a language of identity. To open this segment, I'd like to start with Reem Hilal, architect and earth builder, founder of Hearth, whose work explore our relationship with the soil, with the living matter that surrounds us and that in many ways sustains us. Reem, you often say we are nature. And how does this belief guide your architectural choices and the materials you work with?
Thank you for the introduction. It's very relevant calling it roots and material that we're talking about. That it helps to explain how I really started looking at Earth and why we're going to be talking about Earth in general now. And it's mostly like the most basic material for humans. For example, when I first started this search, whether in architecture, having a background in architecture or design, you can look at nature. That was the first inspiration for me, just to test it out. Like, okay, we are part of nature. You can see the birds have figured it out. They're doing their nests from things around them. The spiders, the snails, they all use things from around. It's basically kind of going back to the very main materials around us. It makes us feel safe without knowing it psychologically. It makes us feel safe knowing where something comes from. Or maybe it's just me, but it does give a safe feeling to know where our everyday objects come from. In architecture, I wasn't convinced with the materials we were using or introduced to, and I didn't feel a connection to it. Looking back at nature, I was looking more into what's available for us to use. Earth is one of those materials. There's stone, there's wood, there's all of that. But to keep it simple and talking about Earth, it's mostly available everywhere. And I think it's part of our identity when it comes when we're designing with it, whether building or products. If you use it, it kind of gives this identity to something because you're using it from the place you get it. It imprints itself on it. So whether you're building, you're taking the materials from the ground, it becomes part of that building. And that becomes part of the identity of the building other than the design, the concept, which are also part of that. But as a material, I think that's very important. And since we are going back to such basics, where the material comes from. Yeah.
And did you share this experience like with maybe students or colleagues, or how do you see they are accepting this material you're working with?
Okay. There isn't much acceptance in general for this material starting out. No one really looks back at it as a building material. No one takes it as seriously as it should be taken. It helped to find a group I work with in Zahne, Robert, Muhammad, and the guys here at the Eco Village, which share those values and they see the importance of this material. And it helps to have a community around you to kind of carry this through. So yeah, at first that really helps, but that's only the starting point. You need to get to people and they need kind of proof, they need to feel it, to feel what you feel about it and understand like the dangers and like, the advantages of such a material. And if there are those disadvantages, to look at them as ways of improving rather than, okay, let's figure something out else up. Let's tear down a mountain. You know, there's a lot of other solutions along the way we can look at other than just jumping into the conclusion of mass producing bricks from quarries. That I think we've missed along the way, and I hope that we get to just explore these again.
Okay, and maybe what should be done to reintroduce this material and to, in order to reshape our relationship with the environment in Lebanon?
What's really helpful is integrating this into the system, the educational system, as we did here in Alba. Getting the students reintroduced to these materials and along with other materials we're going to talk about. Them understanding that we have all these options because we weren't exposed to that. So that really helps. I think it opens up their minds to new options and understand it and work with it. So yeah,
thank you, Reem. Following this idea of reconnecting with nature through making, through working with earth, let's say, I would like to turn to Vanessa Dammous, architect, designer, and ceramist. Her work beautifully bridges scales from architecture space to the intimate dimension of clay and ceramic form. Vanessa, in your practice, you move from the scale of the city to that of an object. So, for you, what connects architecture and ceramics? Is it material, sensorial, or emotional?
Hi everyone, thank you for having me here in Alba. First I have to say that this edition of redesign impressed me mostly from the students' perspective and their work. The work we've seen in Alba and the work we're seeing also at the So the emerging designers are really engaged in this process of creativity, and that's amazing. So I think for me, I want to talk first about this identity of, as an attitude, the way you identify and you engage with matter and the work starts always with this question of how can a material express itself. When I work with clay, I'm reminded that this material reacts, resists, and surprises. It teaches us humility and patience. You cannot rush it. It cracks, it falls apart, and it forces you to adapt. And I think that that's deeply connected as well with how we think about responsibility in design today. We are not in control of the matter, we are in conversation with it. I see materiality like clay, earth, and fibers, right, as carriers of memory. They all come from the land, as Reem was saying. Working with them reconnects us to nature. And clay is not just a natural material, it's nature in transformation. It's very important. It carries layer of geological time. When we reclaim it, when we reuse it, when we reshape it, we're entering into a process that's already begun long before us. So for me, this material is both about memory and language. Those materials have their own intelligence, they have their own rhythm, their own way of evolving, of drying, of shrinking, of expanding. So working with them is a kind of a dialogue. There's always this tension between control and letting go. So you observe, you react, you respond, and out of this negotiation, something happens. Sometimes it's beautiful, and sometimes it teaches you through failure. But most importantly, it teaches you. So the bridging between, bigger scale, smaller scale object and educate me. It's always about experimenting and being taught from nature. So for me, innovation or trying to innovate is not necessarily technological. It's mostly experimental and experiential. So a reinterpretation of the natural process through contemporary ways of making, gestures of making. I wanted to talk to you, I asked you to include these images from a project I saw in Morocco, the earthworks of in the Moroccan desert in Barefoot. These monumental structures built in the 80s invites us really to reflect on this idea of belonging to earth, to sky, and to something beyond the national and the cultural boundaries. This work made me realize that identity is not only inherited. It's the act of really grounding yourself in matter and in place. Belonging becomes this dialogue, again, between the body, the material, and the place, and the landscape, which is very important. So I join Reem in saying that I believe that nature is not just a source of material, it gives us tools for understanding transformation, erosion, fragility, resistance, etc. So I use it to explore transformation, to understand how material evolves, and pushes us mostly to redefine what it means to make and to belong.
Okay, thank you, Vanessa. We were supposed to have with us Badria and Osta, a fiber artist and paper maker. Unfortunately, she couldn't make it today, so but she sent us something to be shared with you. So Michelle is going to read it.
So regarding fibers as roots of local identity, this is what Badria wrote. She said, it's a material as a memory. Fibers carry the memory of a place and craftsmanship, preserving heritage. Its identity through touch, the unique textures and color of fiber make each design a personal signature. It's also environmental responsibility. Choosing sustainable fibers reflects the designer's awareness of ecological impact. It talks also about community and collaboration, working together in fiber collection and processing, strengthen social identity. From material to meaning, fibers are not just materials, but expressions of our relationship with time and nature. Fibers and the earth preserve identity and belonging because they can connect people to their roots, to the land and its memory. Working with natural fibers from our soil revive traditional crafts and give them new life. Through this process, what we create carries the scent of the earth and the voice of nature, keeping our bond with the land alive and our identity deeply rooted.
Thank you, Michel. What reminds us of the work that Badria does is that she shows the deep intimacy between the hand, the gesture, and the material, and how this act, maybe of weaving or recycling, becomes a way of preserving culture, of giving voice to nature itself. Too bad she wasn't with us today, but now let's move to our next part. The second part is transformation and innovation. Let me first welcome Manuela Bonaiti, architect, researcher, and co-founder of Baolab, a Milan-based design laboratory specializing in colors, materials, and finishes. Her work investigates how materials shape not only products, but also human experiences. Baolab often speaks about the future of materiality. What does that future looks like to you?
So, thanks for the introduction. I think I was really enjoying the speech you just did 2 minutes ago. We are unluckily in a world that is very complex and in Europe, in terms of materiality. We have abandoned all the poetics regarding materials, and it's very difficult. We work with big industries, so it's quite hard to be so poetic. Yet our main tentative is to be like that. So I think that what we need to remember always is, first of all, there is a kind of ethic also regarding what we were telling before in the sourcing and especially in processing the materials. And what I see is a kind of wish to create a virtuous system between the sourcing and the final output. We understood, and then I let the word to Guido that is much better than me, he's a material engineer. So what I think, generally speaking, is that we need to create identity through performance. Nowadays, at least in Europe, for big industries. I know it's not very poetic talking about money, but unluckily it's a quite strong base to develop innovative materials. What we can do in this kind of system is to be very conscious of where materials come from, and that's important, as you said before, and how we do transform them, because it eats lots of energy, and it's energy that should be saved or could be saved. So the innovation is for sure regarding the identity, but for sure it is related to performances and processing materials. And what we try to do sometimes is to experiment a new way of processing in a very small portion, but we have the lucky to work a lot with the R&D department of big industries that are very small usually, unless even if the company is big, and you can try to experiment maybe a small part. We cannot innovate the whole process because we have to we don't have the stress to do that. Yet we think we can innovate in that sense. And then you have all the narrative part of the materials that in case of progress or other materials it's really stronger. When you talk about plastic it's a little bit more difficult, but yet you can do something. Guido, thank you.
Okay, my next question also was you did a few days ago a workshop with the students and you explored materials and ways to create and to think about all this subject and what bridges can we build between our Mediterranean cultures, Italy and Lebanon, for instance, through our shared material heritage.
Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for the question. First of all, I think that during this workshop that was yesterday, we encountered we didn't felt that all the cultural barrier, let's say, that sometimes happened in other, not other countries, but in other places, even in Milan, sometimes you can find some cultural barriers. So, being around the Mediterranean, as you were saying, we felt some kind of sharing a similar energy and working in a very similar way. And secondly, we found a very high quality of work here in this workshop for what we have seen, and a very disciplined way of working too. So I think that we really can build something together, and even apart from the workshop, just for these 3 days we spent in Lebanon, we really felt at home, not only for the great and kindness and hosting and so on, but even for probably the sharing of similar values, even in very different cultural history. So I think that really can be a union, in that.
Well, as a material engineer and a researcher at Baolab, because I couldn't introduce you, we switched directly to.
That's all.
Okay, your background is in nanotechnology, and it brings a fascinating perspective on the intersection between science and design. And I wanted to ask you how do science and design meet your work, since we are talking mostly about design?
Oh, nice question. I think that it's something still we are discovering together, working in Baolab, and but there is a huge interconnection because design creates products. And products need to be manufactured with process and materials and processes need a scientific basis. So in fact there is a huge work that can be done in this, and this work can start from ethics, as we said before, because science and innovation really need to go in that direction. So the sustainability part, but the inclusion part, all this can be enhanced by science, and not by science in general, but by a scientific process. And I think in design especially, being sometimes not a very technical and scientific process, there are some implementation that can be carried in, starting from a methodology we know that is LCA, so life cycle assessment. These things it's a methodology to measure the impact of a product, of material through its whole life. Implementing this methodology, that are scientific methodologies, currently improve the quality, the ethic, and sustainability in a very specific term. So I think there's a huge work that can be done here.
Okay, and what do you see as the next frontier in material research? Like, we talk about smart materials, now today we talked also about ethics, opposing to this concept. I rephrase my question. What do you see as the next frontier in material research, one that reconciles performance, sustainability, and emotion? So,
very wide open question.
Yes.
Difficult to answer, but I think talking about performance and sustainability in general, what we see and what we saw in Baolab is the fact that some materials to be adopted must have a high performance, high quality, high finishing quality, and a low price. These are three very important things. And if you have a sustainable material and a non-sustainable material that is cheaper, always will be choosing the non-sustainable material. And that's how things have gone so far to here. So I think what we can do and what we are seeing is the fact that sustainable materials now are shifting to materials that and must shift there, because it's important that they do it to materials that have comparable performance or higher performance with respect to synthetic ones, because otherwise they will not be adopted, or have aesthetic that reflect a synthetic material or a high performing material, but it's still natural. And some of them we are seeing on the back, and this is fundamental, and this is one of the futures of materiality we are seeing. Then depending on the application there are many different futures we are starting to see, and they may be good or not. But on these kind of materials, yes, this is what we are overlooking, let's say.
Another big trend that is now taking place, at least in the US and Europe, is that we are now recognizing that natural materials in itself has lots of science, and we are trying to detach the science that is inside the material in itself. Means that if we are able to read without transforming as we are used to, but able to read the point of strength of the material, even not treated, and we can try to industrialize them in a good way, we can reach really good performance of the material, enhancing the natural material through a kind of their own identity. So just to be a little bit more clear, you all know what is mycelium. So okay, it's the root of fungi that grows in shapes and mold. And it's the technology through which they grow that are interweaved in a very intelligent way. We just need to detach how they're interweaved to understand how they can be resistant. So instead of taking the mycelium and, I don't know, do plaisters or whatever, if we learn how it is built in its own nature and DNA, it it will help us to enhance that materials. And this is quite new. It needs lots of money because it's about research, pure research with nowadays no application except for experimental one. But this could be a very interesting way to work. We have shown yesterday to the students some, for instance, materials, aluminum that is anodized with onions and turmeric and other stuff. And anodization is a process that helps the materials in getting harder, basically, and nicer sometimes. And this is a way to do it with a process that is not really healthy for the planet, but yet, piece by piece, we can add a little bit more of sustainable attitude towards industrialized process. This is another way in which in Europe we are trying to work towards materials. Adding, you cannot go from 0 to 100 of sustainability in 5 years, but yet if you can put a little bit more sustainable sources, transformation, whatever, maybe my nephews will say something better, but not today, at least in Europe.
Okay, thank you. And talking about sustainability, I'm going to switch to Rami Sbeih. Our next speaker is the CEO and co-founder of Plastic Lab, a Lebanese startup pioneering circular economy solution by transforming plastic waste into design and construction material. Rami, my question to you is that plastic is often the problem, is seen as the problem, yet in your work it becomes a resource. So how do you reimagine the identity of this material from waste to possibility?
Hello. So first of all, I'm gonna start by saying that plastic is not the problem. We are the problem. So it's been plastic has been present for the past 100 years almost, and it was created by humans. So Reem was saying that we are nature. So I'm not here to defend plastic. Eventually, I'm not promoting plastic in general, but plastic is natural. So it was created using fossil fuels, so dinosaurs, organic matter, using the sun million years ago. So the problem wasn't the plastic itself, it was how we designed to introduce the plastic into our life. So how nature works in loops, in cycles, and this is why we survived on Earth. So and we took one element from nature and we threw it in a very linear designed way or system today. So this is the main problem. The main problem is that we're taking plastic and there's the consumerism and everything, for example, the water bottles. It's ironic for us, but we don't have any other alternative. So even me, people think that I'm not using plastic, but I can't live without plastic today. So the main issue today is to find alternatives for plastic, stop the plastic production. Until then, Plastic Lab exists and other initiatives exist as well. So what we're trying to do is to, let's say, to ban the linear model of the plastic today and to reintegrate it into nature until someone finds a better alternative, a better solution, so we can get rid of the plastic that we created. It's a monster that we created 100 years ago. Sorry for being very poetic about plastic, but this is how I thought of it. I was inspired by all the talk to do now, and this is what I came with. So I don't know if I answered your question, but I was like practicing what I have to say. So.
In a way, how can you, how in your work you are trying to work with this plastic in order to have always this circular design, recycling technology? How do you express it through your work and your vision?
Yeah. So First of all, in Lebanon, we have, when we see a type of product, any type of product, we can definitely know the color of the product. It's the same for other countries as well. So for example, in Lebanon, we have the halal, the Lebanese sweet. So we all know that the cover of the halal container is like either red or green. So while recycling, we make sure to highlight this color because the people are going to perceive this product, they're going to know eventually that it's been recycled and they know the source of the plastic, of the plastic that we use. So while recycling, we're taking into consideration a lot of things. One of them is this. So we have an identity in our waste as well. So the water bottle lid, the caps. So here in Lebanon, when we're mixing everything together, it's bluish. It's something that, because the majority of beside this one, it's true. But for example, in Italy or in France, it's going to be a different color. So this is an identity as well for the plastic waste. Why are we highlighting this? We're highlighting this so people can relate that, first of all, to see that waste can be turned into something beautiful. And then, so it's an incentive for them. So they're going to keep sorting and collecting because it starts at our homes. So today, the government is not present, or still not present. They're not doing anything about the waste, but we can start at home by sorting and collecting. And our part as Plastic Hub, it's not only taking the plastic and turning it into a product, but as well to do awareness campaigns, not by preaching and talking about we should sort, but just by showcasing that this is your waste and it was turned into a table. The bottle cap was turned into a table. So this is what we're focusing on at Plastic Hub, as well as focusing on the design. So when we say design, it's not only designing the table, having like drawings, and it's the whole thinking that we're doing, the design thinking that we're doing. So who's gonna do this? How much energy are we using? Where is the location? Why are we doing this? The storytelling behind it, as I mentioned, the colors, should we add fillers to it? Is it eco-friendly enough? No, we have everything on the balance, so we can have the best case scenario for any type of product we're creating. So that's it.
And concretely, we don't have, like you say, a plan on the national side to sort, recycle, etc. Through the campaigns you are doing, do you see that people are getting engaged in sorting, and are you having many plastics that comes to your fabric through sorting, through the engagement of the public?
Yeah, we've been working on this initiative. It's been 5 years. We saw a big shift 5 years ago until today for two main reasons. The first reason is that we're in Lebanon, worldwide, we're stressing and we're focusing on the danger of plastic, and people are getting they know more about the dangers of plastics today. But the second reason, sadly, in Lebanon, we only work in a way that if it's needed today, we're gonna raise the alarm today. So, and it was the alarm was raised 10 years ago in 2015 when we had the garbage crisis. But then we had so many other crises. We know all of them. So today it was forgotten that we had a garbage crisis. 2-3 months ago, it was like it's alive again, this problem. So people, we don't care if they're acting like because it's urgent or not, but there is a big shift. We're getting a lot of phone calls. We're not collecting plastic. So we have our factory in Hilal and next to Sbeih, and we're just recycling. So, but my phone is public on Google. Like every 30 minutes I have a phone call that maybe someone wants to give away like 1 kilogram of plastic, which is nothing for us, but it's a lot. Exactly. So there is a lot of changes, and this is very promising. And it's not the only solution that we should be looking for, like collecting, sorting. We should. I don't know how we can do this, but we need the public sector, we need the government, we need a clear structure for everything before we're getting because our landfills are filled today, and there is not much time. So We have a couple of months before getting the garbage on the streets again. And this cannot be done only by plastic garbage. We're like 0.01% of Lebanon, so we need the public sector with us and other initiatives.
Yeah, it's true. We're facing many challenges on this side, and I think
there is a lot of initiatives working on this, but I don't want to be pessimistic, but it can cover 10, 15, 20%. Again and again, we need the government, we need the proper structure, and I don't know who's listening, I don't know if someone is ready to do government here, but they need to move, to act and move fast without thinking of how they're gonna benefit from it on a government level or a personal level. So it's just garbage on the street, and we're gonna get rats, we're gonna get viruses, and there's an informal sector, the kids on the streets. It's a whole thing, so we should act fast.
Yeah, I hope someone is listening. I don't, but first of all, I would like to thank you all for this contribution that helped us discover your experiences, each one of you, and how do you deal with materials. And now this allows us to move to the last part of our talk, which is transmission and education. So everyone is working in his own sector, with his own, doing his own research, and performance in his dans son domaine. And but it can always stay as a personal initiative and stops someday. How do you think that the work that each one of you is doing, how can you act in ways that you can assure its transmission, so it can continue through time and not just stops with you? So how do you see the transmission of your work and your experience can be done? So who would like to answer this question?
Maybe because I'm also in education. So I think education should be really works like a laboratoire, collaboration, a space where we are trying to form responsible people to create with awareness, empathy. I think this is very important. Not only skilled hands, but people with attentive minds, really understanding what they're creating and why. Maybe we can also open up the discussion on the workshops that we did at Alba in the beginning of the summer. We had 4 or 5 different workshops. I was responsible for one that was on glass fusion. So we worked with an artisan. Her workshop is in Akkar. The important idea here was not to learn the technique. For me, it was also about the technique, but really about this immersive experience in the wide landscape of Akkar, and bringing this back to this idea of belonging, identity, understanding nature, in order for us to produce and to make. This is very, I think it's very important in this transmission. And the transformations that we're talking about when we talk about nature are not necessarily only geological, they're also societal. The shifts are happening, and societies are also under the same pressures. Like you're saying, the landscapes are evolving, but also societies are evolving. And I think the objects that we create should be witnesses of these shifts, like awareness about this. Well, I think this is maybe this answers the question.
So Badria has sent a table where she explained how we could allow transmission to happen. So she writes practical proposals for the university, introduce modules or workshop on natural materials into academic curriculum, establish an experimental laboratory for natural materials and sustainable innovation, document student projects and build an archive of traditional materials reinterpreted in contemporary ways, organize exhibitions and open workshops for students and the public to promote sustainable material culture, collaborate with local workshops and artisans to exchange expertise, and connect education with practical experience. Create a material library featuring samples of natural and sustainable materials with technical description. Launch interdisciplinary courses between art, engineering, agriculture, and science faculties. Encourage applied research and entrepreneurial projects focused on developing or reusing natural and sustainable materials. Develop a field training program in collaboration with local workshops and institutions to test materials in real-world projects. Include environmental assessment in academic projects to raise students' awareness of ecological impact and sustainability. So these are Badria's proposals, and I find them really interesting, and I think that they might be efficient.
Yes, let me say also this is mostly what you are doing in the Earth House.
Trying
so
and
this is what you began with, and I guess you should move on.
May I shift a bit the perspective. I think that another relevant point of transmitting a consciousness of sustainability and eco-approach to the system of buildings and design go through the teaching of the appreciation of different aesthetics. I mean, as long as we think that the sleek table and that you never ruin and stand still for ages is the best, it's going to be really hard to make designers and users that will buy this hypothetical table or chair or whatever. So one of our aims we teach in Polytechnico is to understand which are the aesthetics languages of sustainability and to make them acceptable and even loved just as the sleek designed one. Because if I like something, I'm more open to buy it, and we need money to make this circular stuff going in a proper way. So a way that is relevant for us is to explain that sustainability has different aesthetics, of course, and they can be, they have languages, they have a kind of an emotionality, and they can be accepted by the system of the industrial design system and architectural system. One theme that is very strong is that sometimes natural materials change in time. So they change the aspects, their skin, their appeal, and we try to explain that the obsolescence of a material or a product is something that gives value because it brings history. But it's not that easy, because as long as you see a perfect chair in metal acrylate, red and with no sign on it, so there is a huge part, for sure, in terms of educational, for sure in terms of resourcing and politics, it is the main stuff, but also as this product will be used and by people to teach that there are other possibilities of being really cool and flaky with other aesthetics. This is another point we try to bring into our lessons.
As myself, not as Badria, because I find this very interesting. But there's something about what you said, that an object is perfect, and that there's something reassuring about this, because it doesn't change through time, And so there is the fear of time passing, and these objects are resisting time, and so this is something that is reassuring, especially in design. We're always a bit disappointed, the users are always a bit disappointed where they see that the object suddenly, or is broken or has changed, and we're like, oh. So how can we create this relationship of trust between the aesthetic of sustainability and the users? I mean, it's a whole psychological dimension.
Well, we first have to accept the idea that perfection is not perfect, somehow. And I think that as long as we have to learn from Japan, and here we have an expert, as long as a sign that is on an object is a sign of history, of use, of an event or whatever, it can be repaired without taking off the sign, so not getting back to that perfection, that there was something, but still creating something that is getting meaningful. So the kintsugi art, when you broke a pottery and you sew it with gold, is what I want to say. So it's that we can live with our object and live with them, and we decay and have white hair and okay, nice, I'm not less perfect than before. This is the idea. It works a lot with some materials, for instance. Leather can get old with you, and you don't feel afraid of having an old chair in which your grandmother was sitting over reading you a book, for instance. Some other materials have identities that are more difficult to be managed like that. And some categories of material, of product are very difficult. Technological product, when they get ruins, it's kind of a fear, yet you put your stickers on your laptop. So it depends. I don't know. I think we should change a bit, getting back to other workshops we had during this super cool week. The idea of time is not being always the same, neither for us, neither for the object we live in, neither for our houses. So maybe what we have to teach is that the failure is a kind of possibility, basically.
I totally agree, and I'm very passionate about the subject of things going wrong or the material not being perfect. Like Earth is the most imperfect material ever, and it's very hard to perfect it. And it comes from, I think, our human ego to kind of want to make something perfect and control nature. It goes back to how we see nature from the start, no matter it doesn't only rely on the material, it's how we see nature. If you deal with someone, let's say, who understands, is like, let's say, not to say a hippie, but someone that really lives with nature and someone that really appreciates that, they will see those materials in a totally, completely different way and would love that maybe that they need to take care of their house every year and be part of this construction process because it's taking care of them the whole year. So it depends on how we see it, which goes back to education and really how we see nature. There's nothing around us. Not to generalize, but all the materials we use every day, everything we buy, especially in cities, it does not encourage us to go back to nature whatsoever. Yeah. It's just not something practical or fun to have around.
For me, I'm going to go back to the education. Vanessa was talking about education. So in terms of transmission, we worked with the Earth Hub here at Alba. It was one of the best projects or workshops that we had, simply because the younger generation, the young designers, they're more open to new materials. They're more open to having imperfections into their designs. So we thought at Plastic Lab that working with big designers is going to be easier than working with students, third, fourth year, which is totally wrong. So for us, it was an amazing workshop. We had a workshop 2-3 months ago. And we, even at Plastic Lab, we learned a lot from the students. They came back with research, with a lot of investigation about the materials and so on. Especially that since they're still not graduated, then they're not used to work with the conventional materials that we have, like, for example, the marble. So no, it's a new material for them and for us as well. So we're setting the stage today for the young designers, and this is why we're actively trying to work with universities in general, and especially with ABBA, because they're focused on this here. So because this is the impact that we can create, and this is the avalanche that we're gonna create. So education is key in this.
Yes, and it also starts with willing to understand each material, willing to begin with the first level of understanding each material's its degradability and all its possibilities in order to create and design something new, and not just working with maybe des préjugés, like this material is good, this material is not good, why? So maybe the younger generation is more open to learning new stuff and maybe understanding that we really need to go back to the roots. I'm not saying that others are not, but maybe they are more open to absorb new things. Maybe this is the thing. Does anyone has anything to say? So as we reach the end of our discussion, I would like to thank each one of you for your thoughtful contributions and for sharing your vision of what materials are and can mean. And what we've heard today is that materials are not just tools, they have a voice. It reminds us of this famous quote, inanimate objects, you have a soul, objet inanimé avez-vous une âme. Donc, through clay, fiber, plastic, nanomaterials, we tell our stories, our resilience, and our belongings. So again, thank you, and I don't know if someone has some questions.
I can just talk loudly. Hi, thanks a lot, everybody. Just talking about transmission and education, it seemed a lot of the discussion was around kind of institutions, designers, and kind of drawing on a lot of Dana's perspective of, like, the grassroots, the majority of the uneducated masses who are not in this world of design. How do fashions change? When we think about buildings, because that's what we're into. The poor used to live in earth houses, and the rich would live in stone houses, and then they used to pick concrete houses. And then the poor aspire to be like the rich, and so the poor are now also living in concrete houses when they can. And you see it in so many other things. It's often cyclical. And how fashions often start with the rich and the influential, and then everyone else tries to kind of copy them. And so I'm interested to know how we think we can influence fashions, and when you talk about materials, and it's fashionable to have a perfect plastic table. How can we make it fashionable to have an imperfect, say, wooden table, which has a history and has more character? Not just through institutions, but through social media, influencing the masses in different ways.
I think that it's a very interesting question, and a small experience in that, and I think it can be done through narrative. That what you're talking about can be done through narrative. For example, once I was working for Gucci, making the loafers, and they were trying to, and that is of course high luxury, how to sell the defect to their clients. And this was a major issue because clients doesn't want defect. They are paying, I don't know, 1,000 euro for a pair of shoes and they don't want defect. Yeah, for a loafer that maybe in 1 year it's gone. And then they don't want the defect at all. But they started this big project on how to use defected leather and to create a narrative through it, and to create a narrative of use of wastes, use of different resources, and to identify one single loafer through the defect. And this is something that partially worked. And then, from what we see, and since this kind of industries, the luxury industry, have money to put in for the research and development of these new ideas, new materials and processes, then this is something that can go and shift down to normal products we all use. And this is, I think, this could be one way. The other way, from the other side, is from bottom to up. And I think it passes through action, like some of the initiatives we have seen today. And so I think that there are these two main ways that this can happen. Hope this partially works.
There is another way that you design terribly good product. So even if they are not perfect, they're so good and to promote performing that you buy them. Could be a way.
And maybe going back to architecture and talking about that discourse, having always, or going back to a book written by Lubsky, Architecture Without Architects. And it teaches you really how to work with the material that is at hand, local, and so things like this can also be ways to. Did we answer your question?
Slightly. I guess I want tangible examples of how to reach the masses and change. And so advertising is obviously a huge one. And yeah, I like the example of Gucci and from the film. I learned from the film The Devil Wears Prada that even though it starts with the high-level fashion stuff, eventually it filters down. Going to schools.
Fashion is a strong sector in that. Stella McCartney worked with bacteria coloring jumpers and stuff like that with bacteria, with the growing of bacteria, not chemicals. And they have the effects, of course, to change, and they cannot be produced in repetition in a perfect way. And this was not even, maybe a storytelling, but not as strong, I don't guess. But as she's very famous, it was fine. Maybe that is a way, even more powerful than teaching, because teaching can reach people who study. Stella McCartney or Gucci can reach everyone. So maybe it's a wider action. It could be interesting.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, our big game plan is to get like president or a Lebanese film star we're going to build an earth house and then make a big thing out of it. There's going to have recycled plastic tables, and then everyone's going to want them. And then, the jobs come for us.
Thank you to all of you, and I'm sorry I could join this conversation only in the second half. And I don't know if it's the right panel to address this question. And but I have been here for a couple of days, and I have seen a kind of description of design at large as a closed system. But let me have a very uncomfortable position of capitalism. I never heard the word funding or the word customers, while I heard very, very often the word user. Since I have in front of me some entrepreneurs, I would like to know why.
We didn't understand the words that you...
I'm sorry, I heard the word users, okay, but I didn't hear the word fundings or the word customers. So, are you into the market or not? That's the point. Sorry, bit rude, but I think I have in front of me the right people to answer.
So you're talking generally about all materials to have customers, and this is what you're saying. Yeah, it's the way I think about it is it's not necessary to have a customer to know that something is useful. For example, I've been to a lot of marketing sessions and business-oriented things, and they see and look at the market, at what they need. But sometimes the market doesn't know what they need. For example, an earth house, we can simply live our lives without it. It's just maybe someone sees like there's a benefit for that, and we need to show them that. And it's a process. It depends how you go through it. If you're lucky enough to build for a movie star, let's say, and everyone builds it, then okay, that's great. But there's also like this ladder where you start reaching out from the bottom up. You reach out to students, people, enthusiasts. Maybe they don't have the money for it. Maybe they do. Maybe they find alternative ways. We can work together with them around that. So, for example, in our approach, we provide affordable workshops for that. People can do that on their own. So it's not only wealthy people that can build these houses, especially that this type of houses came initiated for vernacular building, like a vernacular way of building. But that's just one way. But you can always climb up the ladder slowly and not really like get out there. But regarding the market, sometimes you're bringing something new or rebirthing what was already there. It's like a reminder, and it's still as important, and it's what for example in redesign we were talking about it, and such exhibitions, they should shed light on these matters to kind of spread this. So it might seem like an overpriced thing, whatever is being portrayed, because it just triggers something that's maybe possible, and makes you ask questions about it. So it becomes more available to people.
Thank you very much for your very clear and complete answer. So I'm wondering how to categorize what you said. We are. It's not liberalism. It's for sure not neoliberalism. It's a kind of form of a new communalism.
I'm not sure with these terms. I'm not very communalism. I don't.
The kind of society that was experimented in the US basically during the 60s.
I'm still not sure what you
I rephrase it and I stop. Let's say.
What can you say in terms of, like on the ground, like how would that be applied? A community kind of way, you're saying?
Exactly.
That's one way. And especially in our case, because of the material, again, it kind of it helps. The material helps in that case, but it's not necessary to be done that way. I can answer in my field, and that is okay with earth. That can be done because it is very available, and it's possible to do it in different communities, and it is a communal thing, and it helps to have a community to do that. It's easy to learn, and it's non-toxic, and all of that, so kids can join in, and that's how initially it was done, like back in long ago in so many countries. I think if you look back historically, a lot of countries had a similar kind of way of building using those natural materials. So you see earth in a lot of different histories in different places, and they were all, this was all done communally. So yeah, that's one way.
Thank you very much. Thank you, really.
When we mix science and design, industrializing natural materials is amazing. While I'm not an expert, I know that when we industrialize materials at the nanoscale or the industrial scale, it can change the property of the material and create a lot of medical problems and be unsafe for the human body. How can we assure this safety, or even can we, and if we can't, how can we minimize the problems? And independently of your answer, how can we communicate or build a connection between this knowledge, design, and even in the education center?
Thank you for the question. In industrializing experimental material in general, not only natural, always have lots of issues and needs a lot of money and a lot of time. Some, like for example, plastic have been discovered and then have been widely used like 20 years after the discovery. Or graphene, nanomaterial been discovered, and then it's not actually none of our product, but it seems like it should be. It seemed like it should be the revolution, but it's not in any of our phones or our everything. So in the industrialization, there are always lots of problems. The health one, it's major. And again, for graphene or for every nanomaterial, there are problems related to the health. And the answer is just investing in tests, investing in medical tests, and take the time to see the results and not fast the process to arrive somewhere, because otherwise we end up with, I think in English it's called asbestos, having asbestos in many houses and having real big health problems, and that's because tests not been done. Probably the industry wasn't ready for the tests on that, and then everything had been needed to be taken away and substituted with another material.
Thank you.
Something just popped in my mind concerning your question, and this is a very personal answer, because I think maybe the difference between the user and the consumer, if we come back to Dana's intervention, is the ethical dimension. I think it's up to the designer to make of the consumer also a user. So if you take into account the ethical dimension, your customer can also be the user. But maybe if you're missing this ethical dimension, your customer is just a customer. I would love our students to think of their customer also as users and not differentiate the two.
Hello everyone. So we've been talking about sustainability, I believe, since at least more than 15 years ago, and there have been efforts within the system that we live in through education, through new entrepreneurship of new materials, it's not a new thing. It has been happening since, at least 15 years, but we didn't see any changes actually in the mainstream that actually made difference. So in this system, in this capitalist system that we live in, do you see, and you are offering your products and your designs through this framework as well, through this capitalist framework, where you have a product, you're selling this product to maximize profits. Do you see that this framework is going actually to deliver sustainability for the masses at some point? Or do you think there's no hope, we need to change the system in order to see results?
For me, I'm going to be a bit controversial, but everything needs to be changed. So there's a lot of greenwashing, there's a lot of titles we're just throwing names and words. So sustainability, eco-friendly, and so on. At Plastic Lab, this really bothers us. This is why we're not into marketing anyways, but we're not using these words, entrepreneur, investment, technical words. It's just words, and the big countries with money and everything, it's just greenwashing. This is our perspective. So I think that a lot needs to be changed. Just to give an example, the biggest entities that are funding sustainability are the ones who are polluting the earth. So it's just a cover-up for them, and the people think that we can use a water bottle because eventually it's going to be recycled again. So it serves their need. So this is I'm gonna stop here because I have a lot to say, but you get the picture. So for me, the whole system needs to be changed. It's not about a capitalistic system or not. As human beings, we need to start thinking in a different way. So
For example?
I'm gonna stay reserved. Yeah, there's a lot of things to change. So, but it won't work. So this is why I want to speak. It won't work because where there is money, there's the power and there's everything. So sustainability is against getting more rich, and it won't work with us. So there is I don't want to be pessimistic, but I don't think there is a way that we're going to break this cycle, and we should move on and work with this cycle. So at least we're trying to fix something that is broken. It's better than not having anything. So for example, Plastic Lab today exists because we got funded for like 5 years. We're like in different pathways, me and my co-founders, and then someone funded us, and then it was like a whole chain of donors from Europe, from Asia, from Africa, from even local entities. And it was just, I'm not saying we're really grateful, we do exist because of them, but it's not enough to give like 2% of the total amount of money just to say that we're helping these countries or this situation or this problem, and on the other side, they're doing horrible things. I'm gonna say horrible things. So I don't think there is a way. As long as money is the power, sustainability will not exist in the way that we picture it. So it's just a scheme that everyone is working for or on. So that's it.
Best to reply to you, as you said, money is power. But for us, let's say on a smaller level, we can simply not put money to be in power and maybe live lesser lives with lesser money and just be sustainable. And that's also still a way, and I like to look at it this way. We look at everything as that needs to be marketed and makes money, and all of that is maybe like that's also part of the education and everything, is to really understand what we really want out of life other than money. Okay, we see that what money has brought us, money having so much power, but if we were to look at things in a different way and just removing money from this high pedestal and just looking at things in a different way, we would change as a humans, like different individuals, I'm saying. Maybe it's a very small scale, but I think that has a lot of, it does have a lot of power for the future.
Michelle as well. I do agree with you because we still exist, me and you. So yeah, I'm not here to say that we should stop everything, all of our efforts and so on, but on a bigger scale, I'm just answering the question of the term sustainability issue, are we working with the right system and so on. For me, no. It's, something needs to be changed. One of the changes is that we're still existing. So.
I just want to be a bit more nuanced about the money, because I don't think the money is the problem. I think the value that is associated to money is the problem. So I think we can, have a very nice life living from ethical profession, right? And if you think about it, it's just where you are placing the money. So if you are doing healthy products that are not ruining people's life, in a healthy, in their health, then you are putting the money elsewhere than in the healthcare. Okay, so it's a prevention. So you're putting it in a research to prevent, and we answering also the young lady's question. So you're putting the money ahead by prevention in good quality products that are not creating health problems. So I think it's the value associated to money is how you manage it and who has it, and the value of the people who has this money.
Thank you.
Thank you all for this. I actually wanted to clôturer en fait un peu notre cycle, remercier tout notre auditoire et tous les étudiants qui ont participé à ça, qui ont fait vraiment un effort énorme, que ce soit pour les lectures, que ce soit pour les workshops, que ce soit pour la construction de la scénographie, que ce soit pour la bonne humeur et l'influence. Donc merci beaucoup pour tout ça. On va en profiter. I'm going to ask actually Guido and Manuela. We finished yesterday evening a bit late the last workshop, and so they're going to surprise us with the results. I'm going to leave it to, just to remember, this is a workshop that was sponsored by the Italian Embassy, and we thank them, and we thank a lot Manuela and Guido. It was really eye-opening as a workshop. So I'm going to leave it to you to explain a bit what has done and to announce to us these winners. I'm going to also please, for all winners of all 3 workshops, since it was done in a hurry, the official ceremony where we're going to give you the certificates, etc., are going to take place in a couple of weeks. Once we have some of your friends. Okay? Thank you. So yesterday, thanks for the students who are here also today, it's Sunday. We've been trying to create a simulacrum of our feelings and sensation moving forward in 10 years. So creating a kind of a concept that is translated in a kind of an object. I know it's very vague, but basically it was like that. And in which each group of students was trying to understand how was the feeling as a perception of themselves in 10 years, and to transfer it through materials, and very simple materials that could work in many different ways. There was paper, for instance, it could be a shield, a time, a line, or whatever. And we have been very happy, and we've been honored to have the possibility to work with you. So thank you very much to all the students, and Janine, of course, as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so it has been difficult to choose. We've had very interesting projects, both in terms of concept and at the end, yesterday night, Manon decided that the winning group is the one of Rebecca Anatolian, Nur Sakr, sorry very much for the pronunciation, Shabil Shami, and Hani Ghaffari. Both for you created a very nice concept and a very nice presentation, and the final prototype was very interesting. And so thank you very much, and we are very happy to give the Baolab prize to you, whatever it could be. And yeah, we had to choose one, and we choose the Rebecca for leading the group. From our perspective, we saw her leading, so we decided for her. So I will ask you and to Janine to send her. Thank you very much.
Bloomberg رئيس بلان جنرال وبعدين نطلع زيادة